Hey, before we start the episode, this is just a reminder this episode does take place before we had changed to a strictly interview format, and as such, there may be references to the other episodes we used to do that don't have anything to do with that. You can disregard that and just enjoy the episode.
The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien help me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, and I will be your host for this evening, day, night, whatever time you may be listening to this. I hope this finds you well. Big thanks to Ukla the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers, and big thanks for you for tuning in to our 23rd episode of the Graphic Histories Podcast. It's been a pretty good run, I must say. Last 23 weeks, getting close to half a year. We're getting there. Pretty soon we'll be there, and that'll be very exciting. It's a great milestone for me. As a creative type, I often get involved in projects. I don't often see them through to their inclusion because, like a magpie, I'll see something shiny and get distracted. But I've been enjoying this podcast. It's been giving me something to do during quarantine, during COVID, and it's something that I'm going to continue well beyond that because I really enjoy it. I love talking to guests, and I'm very excited to bring you today's episode, which features Sandy Carruthers, who is a good friend of mine. He's been involved in the comic industry for quite a while, and you will learn his entire story from his beginnings here in Nova Scotia before he moved to PEI, and then his career in graphic design, his work in comic books, and his illustrations on the Men in Black comic books, which went on to become the films starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. He even got to go to the premiere, which is very cool, and we talk about that as well. I've always been a big fan of Sandy's. His artwork has always been fantastic. But just as a person, he's a very cool guy and very welcoming, very friendly. Always ready to talk comics, talk art, and just talk about anything. And he's always been a great voice in the Maritimes for independent comics and a real champion for people on the island of PEI where he lives, Prince Edward Island, where he's gathered a group together and created Sandstone Comics, which is sort of an independent comic creating company, publishers, if you will. And they do some amazing work. Some of their comics are really good. And as he mentions in this episode, that he has a Kickstarter coming out for his next project, which is a horror-based comic, which looks amazing. And I will certainly be kickstarting. I believe he said that will be tomorrow or the next day. This is being, right now I'm recording this on the 29th of September. So that is a Tuesday night. So I believe by the time you hear this episode on Saturday, which I think is October 1st, if I did my math right, it will be out there. The Kickstarter will be there, and you will get out there and you will back it. Or you can just check it out and see what you think. But it looks like a really cool project, and I hope you give it a chance to check it out and maybe back it as well, because I can guarantee you, knowing Sandy's art, you will not be disappointed with the art of this book. So I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. So, without much further ado, I'll jump right into today's episode because there's not a lot going on in the world, in my personal life, or in the comics world at large. There's been a few announcements which are kind of neat here and there, but we'll touch on those a little later on because it's late and I'm tired. So I'm going to give you the intro to this episode. I hope you enjoy my featured interview with Men in Black comics illustrator and Sandstone creator Sandy Carruthers.
I will.
All right.
Hey, there we are.
Hey, there you go. There he is. And the beard's back. Fantastic.
Wow, what's that?
And the beard's back. That's even better.
It's growing.
Good. You going for the full Santa Claus by Christmas?
Yeah, probably either that or the alternate. What is the demon that is the alternate to Santa Claus? So what do they call him?
Give me a minute. There's a whole movie, but Krampus.
Krampus, yeah.
Yeah, I like Krampus. It's a nice Scandinavian. I think it's Scandinavian, it's Norse or something.
I believe so, and I think it's kind of cool that there's an alternate to it, and we've grown up never known about it. Now all of
Yeah.
a sudden everybody knows about it. So.
It's like a very strange, like it's like they punish children and like by put them in a sack and like for like it's like it's a whole weird
tongue, like
yeah.
5 feet. It's like, wow, that's just creepy.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange Christmas sort of traditions around the world. Like I remember there's a bunch of backlash a few years ago because I believe in one of the Scandinavian countries they have like a side character to Santa called Black Pete, who's like an elf that's all black. So like so people like dress up in like blackface with these elf ears and stuff to commemorate this character, and it's
I've heard of that. Yeah, I think they don't do it anymore because of the whole blackface thing, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% sure if it's still cool in those countries or not, but
I heard that Trudeau's going to be a part of it. Nah.
He'll fly over on his flying carpet and his Aladdin get up.
No, I'm really just brown face.
Yeah.
Have you been, sir?
I've been well, and yourself?
Oh, I've got something. Yeah. Thank you.
Ooh, what do we have?
I got mail.
Ooh.
Yeah, by Illustration Art. Wow, that's crazy. I don't even know why I got that.
Well, that's cool.
That's weird.
Ooh. It's like an art exhibit?
Yeah, of illustrators. It's from
cool.
Heritage Auctions.
Oh, yes, I've heard of it.
Look at the artwork that I'll never own.
Mm-hmm.
But they would be selling like Mort Drucker original artwork, Neil Adams original artwork, and what have you. And so I guess they just mailed this because I subscribed to it. Because if you go on it, you can, if you subscribe, you can click on the artwork and zoom right in. And so you can see all the pen work and the brush work and what have you. So it's funny they sent this to me.
Yeah,
I haven't bought anything from it. However, I was really disappointed. There was a nice Neil Adams from the House of Mystery cover.
Oh, wow.
And it went for $1,300.
Wow.
I know, a Neil Adams.
That is cheap.
Beautiful piece of artwork. Yeah, usually his goes for like 35, 40, 50 grand,
Wow, I wonder how much of a percentage he gets from that. Hopefully a good one, a high one.
I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if he owns the artwork.
Or it's like other people that own it that are selling it off.
Yeah.
Ah, I see.
Oh, look at this. Ooh, beautiful. Gil Eldry. Look at that beautiful piece.
Holy crap.
It's pinup art, right?
That is gorgeous. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's art style you don't see so much anymore.
You don't see it at all. Well,
No.
Even this one, Patrick Nagel, I think I got it pronounced right. Nagel, he was really popular in the 80s.
I feel like I've seen his work in some stuff recently. Or someone who does comic covers that apes that work a lot.
Yeah, this is from 1983. It's an acrylic on canvas.
Wow.
The estimate is $60,000 to $80,000.
Wow. So you going for a lowball offer, or are you gonna go for the?
Yeah, $2, please. Well, this one you'll like. This is by Brian Sorrell. He's an American. Millennium Falcon Cutaway. Look at that.
Oh wow,
What a stunner!
that is fantastic.
10,000 to 15,000. Some groovy style.
Oh yeah, well, 15 grand. I mean, I can mortgage the house again, or.
Oh yeah.
I don't need a car. I mean, I could just sell that.
I never get mail there, but anyway, that's kind of cool.
Well, that's cool. So you were in your office currently, and beautiful down Charlottetown.
Studio. This is where I draw. I'm working on a current book right now. So,
what book are you working on? Or can you
Dark
divulge?
Sanctuary.
Yes, this is your horror comic, right? That you're doing with.
With Dave Storr writing it, and Dave is a island writer, and he had just written a book called Monster Man that I read and really liked. It was a bunch of his short stories, but I liked his horror writing because he's one of those writers that can give you normal, and all of a sudden just shock the shit out of you with just crazy, macabre scene. So he never wrote comics before, but he popped up and inquired if I'd be interested in working with him on a book, and so we got together, and he told me the premise of the idea, and I really liked it, and I said, can we set it in Charlotte City? And he said, yeah, you totally can. And I said, there's this place called The Cradle, and it's a perfect spot in Charlotte City for this. So he's developing a whole supernatural line based on, and this will be the first of the series. So
that'll fit within the established sort of Charlotte City that you've created in your
Exactly.
comic through Sandstone Comics.
Exactly.
Very cool. So you're just like welcoming others into the fold of the Sandstone universe.
Slowly but surely. Slowly but surely. I mean, our original intention was to go to issue 3 of Indestructible and issue 2 of Glory Bound and issue 2 of Century Man. But because of, the COVID, it kind of put the kibosh on that, because I didn't really feel there was any sense in putting out more stuff, until conventions open up again, where we can start, showing our work again and promoting and what have you. And even comic shops, like, you hate to solicit comic shops because it's like, wow, would you like to, and they're like, we can barely survive our rent. Why, so.
Yeah.
So working on this new book, we wanted to do a horror line. So Dave came at a perfect time, and we were pretty lucky. So I'm currently working on the inks of it now, and the Kickstarter starts not tomorrow, but the day after.
Beautiful.
And so this is good timing, André. Thank you.
Oh, hey, no, I'm glad I could help. Yeah, no, plug away. That's like the whole thing about this is just to speak with people, in the comic industry or in the outskirts of it, or somehow connected to it, and just learn their stories. But I'm always happy to help. Like, I always push this sort of stuff on social media as well to help them get their work out there and get attention.
I think it's so important because, I mean, if you think about it, there wasn't a heck of a lot coming from the Maritimes, really, 5 years ago or so. And, there are a lot of separate situations. And I really love the fact that now, people are getting on the publishing bandwagon, and we're seeing more and more really good content. I think about locally, I think about Pegamoose Press with Troy and Brenda, and the success they're having with their lovely books that they're producing. So it's always an inspiration. And there are still more in the woodwork, and it's just like, wow, I just want to rummage through that woodwork and see what we can draw out and get people excited about comic books again.
Yeah, there's a really sort of unknown community in the Maritimes that we haven't really discussed in the show before, but it is true. Like, you go to these conventions, there are a lot of people with indie books, indie comics, artists, writers, inkers, everybody kind of from in all aspects of it that are out there doing their thing. And it's really cool to meet them. And it kind of sucks with the COVID, as you mentioned, that we can't do the convention circuit right now and kind of meet more of them in person. But there's a really cool community here, and a lot of other artists from around Canada and writers and stuff that are kind of making their way out this way, realizing that, the Maritimes are a pretty sweet place to live, and it's a lot less expensive than some other places. And especially in the comic industry, you can work anywhere. So.
Well, that's just it. And I'm really pleased to see, a lot of pros coming from other parts of the country and the world, and choosing the Maritimes as their home. Oh, is that a spirit?
Oh, no, sorry. There's a strange noise out the window, and I wasn't kind of sure what it was, but I think it's my neighbor. Sorry, buddy. I'm just staring at the ghost.
Somebody comes in and hands you.
Didn't mean to distract you there. Sorry, continue.
No worries. Yeah, I have they had just turned the heat on in this building on Monday.
Oh, yeah. And it's like super warm now.
Cold. And now it's like roasting. I had the window opened. But it's too noisy. There's construction going on outside, so I'll close it. So I'm okay. I'll be fine.
Okay, good. I worry about you, Sandy.
Don't worry. Let me have a drink of my coffee.
Oh, excellent. So where did Sandy? Are you you were situated now in Charlottetown, but is that where you were from originally?
No, originally. Well, I was born in Nova Scotia. I was born in Halifax.
Oh, I knew I liked you for a reason.
What's
I knew I liked you for a reason.
I'm a blue noser by birth.
Uh-huh.
My family moved over here when I was about 5 or 6. Yeah, 5 or 6. So I went to grade 1 here.
Okay.
I went to kindergarten over there. So yeah, I guess it would have been 6. In my memory's eye, and of course, as each year goes by, it's you try to remember more and more. And I don't know if this happens to you, André, but sometimes you'll have a childhood memory and you're like, well, maybe, did I read that? Did that really happen? Right? But I remember 2 addresses that we lived at. We lived on Leahy Road. Do you know that in Halifax? and Windmill Road.
Oh, yeah,
Which
Windmill Road's a big one.
Yeah, and then
In Dartmouth.
that's where Dave Howlett lives, is on Windmill Road. So that was kind of neat how how I went back and saw his house, and it was like, wow, where is our house where we lived? But our house was by this hill, and Andre, when you're a kid, everything is 10 times larger.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure that this massive cliff that went down to the railroad track, where a house was beside, it seems so so deep, and I'm sure it probably wasn't that deep. It's probably just a little mound. But my brother and I decided to go down and see the trains. And if you appreciate, this is 1963, 64. So back then, you used to just leave the house and be out of the house all day. It was like weird how you don't see that now with kids, especially in urban centers or what have you. And so we went down to this hill and we got trapped halfway. We kind of got lost halfway. So we didn't know how to get back up, and we didn't know how to go down. And we were really freaking out because we're like 3 years old and 4 years old at the time. And I remember this girl came from around the corner, and she was probably a teenager, maybe 12, 13 or whatever. And where she came from, my brother just bolted where she came from. And so she looked at me and said, "You stay there. I got to go after him because he's going in the wrong direction." So we went and got her. And so, I don't know, to that angel in Dartmouth, I don't know, we could still be at that hill to this day,
Oh, well, wherever she is, hopefully she's listening and she remembers. I'm sure that's a certainty.
Yeah. Funny.
So is it just you and your brother? Only two?
No, I come from a family of 7 kids.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's way too many kids.
I have 2 stepsisters. My mother was previously married, and then I have I gotta keep the number up here. 2 stepsisters and 3 sisters and a brother. Well, my brother passed away a couple of years ago, and as did my second oldest sister passed away in 2000. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
We're down to narrowing down. Thanks, but it's interesting. It's interesting.
So your mother came into the relationship with 2 kids already, and then married your father, and then all the other kids came?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of children.
Yep. And my dad, what's that?
That's a lot that's a lot of kids, but by today's standards. By the standards of like this, by in the 60s, like
quite a modest crowd.
Yeah, that is actually fairly true. My father has I shouldn't put myself in the spot here. Like 7, I think there's 7 in his family as well. Yeah. And on mom's side, there's like 6. A couple of them were adopted, but there's like 6 of them. And I had a friend in school that had 21 aunts and uncles. His father had 20. In his father's family, there was 22 children.
Imagine. I had a friend, and she came from a family of 13.
Yeah.
And when she was growing up, because the older kids would move out, she never knew her older brothers or.
No. Yeah.
They'd be moved out. She was aware of her, what have you. So.
Wow,
it's weird.
That is crazy. So what did your folks do?
Mom was a stay-home mom. She, she raised the family, and Dad was chief engineer for the Coast Guard, John A. Macdonald, and that's why we ended up in Halifax. Both Mom and Dad were born on PEI, but then Dad went into the Navy when he was 18, and after which he joined up with the Coast Guard. They put him through school and what have you, get his engineering license, and so he ended up on the John A. Macdonald, which was, posted or whatever, ported, I guess, I don't know what you say, but moored in Halifax, so where, the Coast Guards are there. So
that's amazing.
And that was his career. So I grew up seeing Dad like once every 2 or 3 months, you know what I mean? Like he'd be gone for 6 months. He'd be home for a couple of months, and then he'd be gone for another 6 months. But it's where a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's too bad." And I'm like, "Well, we never noticed. That was normal for us."
Yeah.
Like he would get up and he says, "Well, I'm off to work," and we'd be like, "Well, see you, Dad. I'll see you when you get home." And you know, we wouldn't miss him or anything like that. It was just normal. Like he was going for a day in the office.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
it
know
was
if
a
you had that
6 month
experience.
spiel.
Yeah, for 6 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
up north, up in the Arctic. So
Wow.
carving ice.
Did your mother find it difficult, seemingly, to life your father for that extended period of time?
I think when she, I think when we moved to the island and we ended up in a place called Cherry Hill, which is just outside of another little place called Mount Stewart, in this 4 square house. My mother went through, you know, quite a few bouts of depression and what have you, because, you know, and I would think that's what got her was, you know, because she went from being quite busy, you know, in Nova Scotia, you know, and she would have parties and have people over and what have you. My folks always had the best parties. And then when she moved to the island, I think it was rough on her. But you know, I mean, she had plenty of adventures with the kids, so yeah.
So
You
she
know,
seemed
we
to get
kept
through it. It
going.
was like it wasn't a steady, like she wasn't like in deep in depression your whole time, just early
Not
on.
the
Or
whole time.
oh,
No,
that's
there was,
good.
I think it was in our teen years. That's when it sort of hit her hard, and
Hmm.
she did take hairdressing as a
Okay.
course, which sort of kind of got her back into the groove again. But it was tough. You know, yeah, I would imagine it was tough. Pretty isolated.
Yeah, you'd think, especially if someone that's, because I wouldn't say an extrovert, but I guess I could say that in a way that like I like being social and I like talking to people and getting out there. And
Yeah,
imagine, especially for women at a time period like that, when like it wasn't as common for them to have jobs or to be able to go out into the workforce
yeah,
and be out in public every day. If you were the sort of person that enjoyed those sort of social interactions or sort of, you know,
yeah,
crave that, it would be pretty wilting to be, you
yeah,
know, stuck in a home and not being able to do that, or in a new environment for a while before you get used to it and meet friends and kind
yeah,
of build up that sort of
exactly,
social
exactly.
contract. So
And her family was from a place called West Point, which is on the other end of the island, going west, obviously. And so therefore, we would go up every summer to West Point, and that's where we would spend our summers. And it was just in this cottage right by the beach, and it was idyllic. You know,
beautiful.
it was sort of like my heaven as well, because I was going through a bit of a, you know, teenage angst period as well, where I didn't enjoy that part of my life, but
Hmm.
then I had the summer to enjoy. So yeah,
Was it like the school part of your life you didn't enjoy, or
yeah,
just
no, school and I did not mix well at all.
were you just not a student, or was it just the interaction with other kids?
Both, both.
Yeah.
I didn't, I couldn't get into it. I didn't understand it. And even though I was academic, I was, I was basically more interested in drawing
Mm.
and more interested in anything else.
So you're like the
I'm very
seminal
introverted, you know, so I didn't.
seminal art child.
What's that?
You're like the seminal art kid in school.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
In fact, in my high school, I was the only kid that drew. I actually looked around to find another kindred spirit in my high. I couldn't find anybody.
That's so funny because, like, literally, I was like that kid in my school too. Like, literally, I went to a very small school. There was anytime any project needed to be done where somebody needed to draw, I was always the one that they would get to
I'll
come
go
do.
to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Were you a part of the yearbook committee?
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did the mural on the wall. The grads all got a mural. I drew the mural, and I drew pictures in the yearbook, and I did all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, I think it's it must be a thing. It must be a thing with creatives is that, you know, that sort of introversion or that kind of, you know, because I mean, if I wasn't, I don't think I'd get near the work that I would get done.
Mm.
I would be constantly doing something else and probably at a job where I don't have to really think about a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. That's fair. I feel that's the trap I fall into because I do get busy and then I find it tough to find the time to get back to the art thing. But when I lock in on it, I'm really locked in on it. That's why I'm afraid to lock in on stuff, because when I do, it's
yeah,
consuming for a while.
yeah.
So
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, the way I structured it was you know, as you know, I taught for 25 years at the
mhm.
college. I'm getting ahead of myself, but
Yep. Well,
I,
we can jump around.
yeah. But because of that, I was able to enable me to be able to do what I'm doing now, which is just focusing on my comic books for really literally the first time in my life to do it full time. And like when I was in my 20s and I broke into comics at a semi-professional level, it was always part time because of course I had to do real work
Yes.
that would pay the bills and feed the family and what have you. So, you know, I never really had the luxury to, you know, focus on it. So I said, well, you know, so 25 years later, you know, I was able to do that and trying it, see what happens.
Was comics always like when you were the art kid in school, like drawing and stuff, was comics always sort of the goal for you? Or
Oh, absolutely.
yeah?
Absolutely. I got really hooked on comics pretty well. I would say grade 7 or grade 8 is when I really got hooked on them. And it was a really good time, man, for comics, because like DC was doing all the multi-genre books. You know, they were doing horror books and war books, westerns, and what have you, and superheroes. And as it was Marvel, but I think it was Marvel that came up with the black and white magazines during the
Mhm.
70s, and
Yeah.
they were just amazing because I
Yeah.
was already reading Airy and Creepy magazine and
Mhm.
Vampirella magazine. And, you know, so it just was a nice transition into that. And some of the most gorgeous work, as far as I'm concerned, some of the most gorgeous work came out of those magazines in terms of black and white, using washes and what have you.
Would
And
that be like the Howard the Duck stuff and the
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
the big
Howard the Duck had his own comic book, and
Mhm.
I collected that. Yeah, actually, Howard the Duck was one of my first collections that I
Really?
just started from issue 1 and hooked onto it. Nova was another one,
Yep.
because it was always disappointing to, you know, graft onto a comic book, and then you look at the number and it's like at number 200, and you're like,
Mhm.
you know what? So anything new that came along, it was like number 1, number 2. But I was a horrible collector. I was a reader. You saw my comic rack, you know.
Oh, it's great. It's a well-loved comic rack.
It's a very well loved comic.
Yeah, it's definitely like I don't know, I collect, but I'm not like, you know, I'm not like the one that's like, you know, white gloves and afraid to
Mm.
touch the
I
comics.
wish I was, in a way, you know.
Yeah, I guess me too, in a sense. I guess you may have more things that are worth value later on in life.
Well, that's it. But it's valuable to me, so, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So when you finished high school and you finally made it out the other end of that, what was the next step?
Next up was college. I went to Holland College, and I took, it was then called the Commercial Design Program.
Mhm.
Coincidentally, Dave Stewart, who's writing the book that I'm working on now, his father was my instructor.
Oh,
Russell
really?
Stewart, yeah. And Russell was one of those instructors that was very frank with you. Like if he saw your work, he would just call it for what it was.
Mhm.
And it doesn't work a lot with a lot of people. It worked really well for me. I don't know why. I always gravitated to the hard ass instructors. I
Mhm.
always gravitated towards them because you didn't want to muck about with them. You know what I mean? You really worked hard to see them satisfied, you know, and it would be a challenge accepted type thing. So whereas other instructors that were more, yeah, gentler and kinder, you were like, you know, you got a mark, and you know it didn't mean as much to you. But
Yeah, that's
it
fair.
was always the hard asses that you always said, I'm gonna, you know.
I had an English teacher like that. It's funny because my English teacher, his brother was the art teacher, and
Mhm.
they were both very different types of personalities. Yeah, as the English teacher, he was like super gruff, but expected
Yeah,
a lot of you. But it felt rewarding to impress him or to make
yeah,
him.
yeah,
And the art teacher I love too, but he was also I do whatever you want today, and you know, I
yeah.
always got high marks, so they usually just drew stuff or did something, you know,
Right.
something artistic in class. While other kids just
Yep.
on the internet or did something else, but I
I
always
don't
tried
know.
to at least keep it art.
Yeah, you know, and it's as you said. I mean, the thing is that, you know, what inspired me to start drawing, I always drew, you know, but it was always sort of, well, it was hobby level, obviously. It was
Hmm.
just, you know, and I always like to say it was the only thing I could do. So, so of course, you're just always doing what you can do. And anyway, it served me well. It serves me well. I guess I shouldn't talk in past tense. It's you know, I still enjoy it, and I'm still, and you know, as you know that the most difficult part of this journey is your own head, and that monkey in your head that's constantly like riding you, and you have to ignore that monkey. It's like the Buddhists say, you know, give the monkey a job. Their job is to keep you breathing. And then after that, you can start focusing on your own stuff. And I think there's wisdom to that.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's keep the
Yeah.
monkey brain, keep the monkey busy.
Yeah, and that's his job. Your one job, monkey, is breathe. You just keep me breathing, and I'll take care of all the rest of this stuff.
I
So,
like that. That's really cool.
yeah, I liked it too. I said, yeah, I can live with that.
That's a great when the Sandy Carruthers autobiography comes out. The keep the monkey breathing, or give the monkey a job is a great title for the autobiography.
You give the monkey a job, then you're fine. You know?
So you were into the commercial art when where was this the breach into comics?
Well, when I took commercial design, the profile I chose was a graphic artist, which I'm really glad I did, because with graphic art, you're dealing with doing screen printing, you're dealing with doing lithographs, like you're doing all of the work from conception to printed stage. I worked with an offset printer that was right at the college. I learned all of the steps, to go through, and that was really valuable, because at the end of the day, when I graduated and still not having half a clue what I was doing, I had a more determined, idea of what I did want to do. So it was very good for me. And then I'm one of those types of people that whenever I start something new, I always try to visualize myself retiring doing it. And if I don't visualize myself retiring doing it, then I don't stay with it. It's like, for me, it's like, this is not a forever thing. This is something. But I had a list of things I'd like to do. And one obviously was comic books. The big goal, of course, was to get in with the big two. My ambition then was to be a finished penciler and have that job, back when that job existed. And it was only because my ink work was not very good. It's still a work in progress, but
it's an art that most people do not appreciate. Like, a lot of people don't understand how much work goes into inking. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It takes art from like okay to amazing sometimes, and it's a subtle thing, but man, it works well when it works.
Yeah, like I've talked to pro artists who are just primarily pencilers, and I'd ask them, do you ink your own work? And they're like, oh, it's like seam filling. No, that's a magic mystery, and blah blah blah. But then later on, I took one of the correspondence courses with Joe Kubert at school, which was really great. It was that sort of thing that I really made an ambition. But within it, that I learned from that was, they said, learn how to ink your own stuff. Do all of your stuff yourself. And even though it may be a process, be patient with that process, because inevitably, hopefully things will come together and make sense and look good to what you're happy with. So then after commercial design, I worked in the field for a while, started up a firm with two other partners it was then called Graphex, which later was called Graphic Communications. Then I moved to Toronto and I went to Sheridan, took the illustration program. And the reason why I took illustration, because I had a choice between animation or illustration, and I picked illustration because I looked at the animation field and I said, I don't have the attention span, I don't think, for animation.
I don't think I do either.
You know what I mean? Like, I looked at in-betweening as probably the job you're going to get, because that's what everybody got.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I don't. And I've talked to in-betweeners and I've asked them, I said, well, because for me, it just looks like such a, and they say, oh, no. They're very philosophical about it. And they say, no. They said, our job is to let that rhythm flow, and so when we're watching it, we know that animation is our doing. And I said, oh, that's good philosophy.
Yeah. I could think of worse ways to look at it. If you enjoy it, I mean, hey.
Well,
certainly,
exactly.
But with modern animation, I imagine that's slowly dwindling away. That's sort of in between work.
Well, now it's digital.
Yes.
So, for the most part, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, they bemoan. It's even graphic design. People bemoan, oh, remember and cut and paste up and layout and what have you. And it's like, no, it's so much nicer now. You can
Oh,
be
yes, yeah.
more precise.
I actually was thinking of you yesterday because thinking about you and I discussed what graphic design used to be compared to like what it is for me now to what it was when you would learn, and like the giant camera and the room and all the cells and all that sort of stuff. And me and a friend, we get together and watch movies usually once a week, and we alternate who picks the movie. So it was his turn last night, and we watched Cape Fear, the Martin Scorsese one.
Yeah.
Great movie. I'd never seen it. So yeah, I'm trying to catch. Like, I watch a lot of movies, but there are quite a few of the classics that I didn't catch up.
Yeah.
But the white Jessica Lange's character, God, why can't I think of his name right now? The actor that played not De Niro, but the other one.
Oh,
the gravelly voice. Nick Nolte's wife.
Nick Nolte, right?
Jessica Lange. She's a graphic designer, and she has the big art table, and it's the she's working on a logo, and it's the drawing it out in the circle pattern and the whole thing, and now with computers, you barely sit and, like, if it's a logo work, you don't really actually usually touch a pen and very often.
No, not at all. I mean, at most you're doing thumbnails in a sketchbook, just to gravitate some ideas. But yeah, you open it up in Illustrator, and that was the challenge too going forward, because when you did it hands-on, you did, your logos, you draw a logo that's going to be like, I don't know, the size of a coffee mug or a business card or what have you. So you always had to be aware of the reducibility of it. So you would do a logo and it would be, I'm not lying, it would be like that big, but it had to be done so precisely that you could cut your finger on it, so that when it reduces, it looks like a machine did it. And I kind of miss that. But it's no different than zooming in, zoom. Clean up those lines, get rid of those anchor points that you don't need and what have you. So, so graphic design is it's a different beast now. But I'd rather draw comics.
Well, yeah, but it certainly gives you, like, if you're especially making independent comics, like, to me, one of the things I was happiest to learn, I mean, I learned a lot of stuff in my graphic design courses that I really enjoyed and I use to this day. I had a great instructor also. But, things that I learned that came of it is, like, all allowed me to go into the other parts of comic creation that you may not, instead of just being able to draw in ink, perhaps, now you can letter, you can overlay logos, you can, color. If you're into the coloring side of it, then it's all there. So you literally, with the right amount of skill, can put the whole thing together, short of printing it, unless you're in a print house, 100% yourself, which is amazing.
Well, and that's the cool thing about it. I mean, it's an advantage for sure. To be able to do the pre-press and the design, it's definitely an advantage, and to be able to understand how to do files properly, so that when you send it to the printer, it makes sense to them. It works with them, and also being able to have the vocabulary with a printer is very important. A lot of printers are very frustrated when they get work and artwork and it's all JPEG 72 DPI.
Oh, that's the worst.
And it's like, I can't do it.
I love the as a graphic designer, whenever someone's like, "Hey, I got this logo I've already have done up or whatever, it's in a Word file, send that over to you," and my eyes always roll so far in my head and they almost pop out the back.
Oh, seriously, and then it's on you. I mean, I did a poster a few years back, and the logo that they had, for their it was a theater group, and the logo that they had, they didn't have any working copy of the logo at all. All they had was this crappy little JPEG of it, and it was all like precise, fine lines. It was like a really complicated logo. So I had to take it into Illustrator and reconstruct the whole thing and make it exactly like it is. And nobody gives a shit about that stuff.
No.
At the end of the day, they're like, whatever.
Yeah, I do that all the time. And have to recreate crappy logos all the time. That's most of my job.
But I mean, if you don't do it, it's going to look horrible. And going forward, you're giving them something that they can work with. Vectorized logo it's a valuable thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But, nice job, man.
So
my students is all of your very best work will be the stuff that no one will even notice.
Yep. The part that actually, it's funny getting into the graphic design side of things, the part that I always laugh about is whenever I do logo work for someone, I'll give them like 5 options or something. And the one like when I do one first one that I just like, I really love it. Second one, like it's a variation of the first one. I'm digging it a lot. Third one usually is something way different, but I'm also really digging. Fourth one's like, all right. And then fifth one's like, I'll just throw a 5th option in there so they have something to look at. And it's that one they always pick. It's the last one that I'm like, all right, I'll just throw them a 5th option because who knows? And it's the one that I like the least that they're always like, oh, I love that one. Let's go with that one. I'm like, what? But that one,
Of course you like that one.
You don't argue with the customer as long as they're happy, but I'm just like, but that one is so much nicer.
I know. And well, it's like, what book was it? Oh, Cheese Monkeys by Chip Kidd. And in it, the character who is a design instructor says to his students, don't fall in love with your ideas, because ideas are whores.
That's a really good line. And Kidd has Chip Kidd has a long history in graphic design prior to like design in general before he got to comics, right?
Well, and the thing is, he always was in comics, but he uses comics as a springboard for his inspiration. So he always goes to comics as his inspiration to become a graphic designer. Yeah, he's done like over 1,000 book covers.
Well, he's amazing work. His Batman Death by Design comic is beautiful.
Yeah,
very cool. So okay, so you're at Sheridan. You finished that.
Yes.
And then where the comics come in?
And then, then after that, I said I have to get out of Ontario, so I moved back to PEI.
You just not digging and living in.
Spending money, and I wanted to make money, so I came back. I set up a business called the Pen and Ink Studio, and it was just actually not that far from here. It was around the corner, another brick building over here, and I was doing illustration work and what have you, and I used to get do you remember the Comic Buyers Journal? It was CBG. It was like a newspaper type format. Maggie Thompson published it. So, pardon me. There was an ad in it from Malibu Graphics. No, it wasn't Malibu. It was Eternity Comics. And they were coming out with a series of books called New Mutants or New Humans. And New Humans was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek against the, or X-Humans.
EX Humans. I remember that.
X-Mutants.
Yeah, EX Mutants.
Yes.
Yeah.
EX Mutants. And
there was so much of that at that time. Was this be the early 90s or late 80s?
This would have been the late 80s.
There was so much of that then.
Massive boom of black and white books.
Yeah.
The comic shop was bursting, and therefore, a lot of black and white titles were going in it. And Eternity was one of them. Aerosol was another, both of which ended up being Malibu Graphics collectively. And anyway, their ad was, they were doing a series called Shattered Earth Chronicles, and it was based in the X-Mutants spectrum, where they said pick a part of the planet during this time, which is apocalyptic, post, devastation, what have you, and create a story and send it to us, And so I set my story in, it was in New York, and it was a sci-fi story called Twilight's Last, and it was about a 6-page or 7-page story, and they accepted it. And I said, oh crap, now we're gonna draw this thing. So so I drew it and I sent it in, and then after that they just started farming work to me. And so I think the second book after that was Invaders from Mars, which was based on the movie, but not based on the movie at all. It was sort of like its own adaptation of it.
Like Mars Attacks, sort of like that, or something else.
Remember the old black and white movie Invaders from Mars?
Oh yes.
Over the hill and the ship goes down.
Right.
And it was a neat movie. And so anyway, so the series was kind of cool. And that went for 6 issues. They always did everything in short pockets, like 3-issue, 6-issue pockets, which was smart.
Very.
We're kind of doing the same thing with Sandstone, sort of. Where you collect them after a while, but it's not ongoing. So we'll see.
It's great. It's a great idea because to keep up with the hopefully demand, but also the you know, the schedule that requires doing a monthly book or whatever is crazy. So if you can,
Impossible. Yeah.
if you
And
can, I gravitate towards the idea if I do something soon, which I want to do, is something that's like a done in one sort of graphic novel. At least that way I have a finished book. I can say,
yeah.
here it is, you know, and I don't have the pressure on myself to, you know, keep creating stuff
No, and
on
I
top
think,
of that.
yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, we certainly can't do it here. I mean,
Mm.
there are only a couple of people.
Mhm.
You know, you kind of need a team around that. And right now, we're still doing proof of purchase. Right now, we're still trying to, you know, put ourselves, our niche into the market, and so we're very early stages at this point. You know, like I said to the guys, I said this is a 5-year journey. You know, so this is not an overnight thing. This
No.
is not Ninja Turtle situation or Service situation. This is
Mm.
something that we're going to have to kind of keep, you know, rolling out
Yep.
in a good time and hope for an audience. So, but anyway, so Malibu got me busy with that, and of course, inevitably, Men in Black, you know, came across my table because I ended up being sort of like the sci-fi artist. And remember, at this time, I mean, Rob Liefeld was working for these guys. Leonard Kirk was doing work for these guys. Oh my gosh, Ron Lim was doing work for these
Oh,
guys.
wow.
There were a lot. Bruce Timm.
Wow.
One of my Invaders from Mars covers is illustrated by Bruce Timm. It's
Wow.
crazy. So you know, in fact, if you go backward and look at this stuff, it's like, holy crap, that person, my land, you know. So the black and white boom was really good for a lot of artists. Dale Keon, he did one of my covers, which was really cool. But he, you know, he was with Aircell, Barry Blair's Aircell. And when Aircell went over to Malibu, you know, Dale Keon went, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name right. Keon, Keon, Keon. Yeah.
I don't
He
think I
ended
could
up
correct
doing,
you. So,
yeah, he ended up doing the Hulk. I think that was one of his big books. Brilliant illustrator from Toronto. So
well, many of those names that you mentioned, I mean, aside from the huge ones like Bruce Timm and Liefeld, like Ron Lim, I remember all his stuff from Marvel, all his space stuff. He did so much space stuff through Marvel.
he did Silver Surfer
Yeah.
for quite a long time.
Yeah, and I remember that would have been the early 90s probably. I got a lot of those
Also
books.
that weird little shine, you know. Just
Yeah, he always had the shine. He did Spider-Man too. Whenever he drew Venom, there's always like a
Oh, yeah.
shine on the
I
head.
think Eric Larson did his start with Malibu as well.
Oh, wow.
I think so. But then of course the Image thing went crazy. Malibu went crazy. Everybody went crazy. I went busy. I just got too busy. I had just had a daughter, and it just basically had to ramp up my work. So unfortunately, my comics, you know, sort of diminished. And then I got hired at the college, and it was like, holy crap! Now this is my life.
Yeah, so you got hired as an instructor at the college.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that would have been 92. So yeah.
And so when you were doing Men in Black, that's when your daughter came along?
Yeah.
And when,
She was born in 90, so I was doing Men in Black prior to that. So
okay.
I was doing the second set of Men in Black because it went for 6 issues, and I couldn't ink it in anymore. I used to ink in the first 3-4 issues, but the last 2 issues I couldn't ink, so because I just didn't have time.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing 2 books at simultaneously, even at the weekends, while going through all that stuff. So it's
Wow.
crazy. So Scott Dutton, he's another Canadian artist. He took over the ink and chores of Men in Black for 4, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people know that, but yeah. And he did a really good job, you know.
Very cool.
Mm.
So at that point, because how long, like Men in Black didn't have a super long run as a comic before it became a movie, did it?
No, 6 issues.
Really?
Yeah.
And then so where did the movie, like the movie studios come sniffing around then?
Well, I don't know because
okay.
I was done with the contract and it was finished, and I was pleasantly going on my merry way up here. But meantime, the Malibu guys, you know, Hollywood did the big call out for because of Batman's success with Tim Burton and what have you, and so they did the big call out for comic books from publishers, of the which they submitted Men in Black, and Barry Sonnenfeld jumped right on it.
Mm.
And his interpretation of it.
So that would have been something that would have worked out with the writer of the comic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The creator,
The
which
creator.
is Lowell Cunningham, and yes, and contractually he is identified as the creator, and I'm fine with that, because for me, this wasn't like a 300 situation or Watchmen situation.
Mhm.
Literally, I mean, the artwork, Andre, is nominal at best. But that's
the version of the characters that were used are very different as well from in the movie
yeah.
from the comic as well.
Oh, very much so. No. Even when I had met Rick Baker at the premiere, because Rick Baker, I idolized Rick Baker.
Oh, he's a genius.
From when I was a kid. Just loved his makeup work. And I went up and I told him where I was. And he says, I didn't look at your book at all. He says, I purposely didn't look at it. And I said, I get that. I get it.
Was he just looking for his own inspiration, or
he wanted to invent his own stuff?
Yeah.
He said he didn't want to, and I think if I would have been of a different caliber, I think it would have been a different story. But I just wasn't that caliber. You know what I mean? Like if I would have been at the level, say, Frank Miller was with 300, where everything is realized and beautifully done, then that would have been a different story. But I wasn't.
Oh, well, I wouldn't trivialize your pardon. I mean, they need someone to put pen to paper to get it out there. So
Well, I made it a comic book, so
yeah, that's true. So you got to go to the premiere. That was cool. I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a weird coincidence. My first San Diego Comic Con I went to was in 19. Oh Lord, where's the brain? It would have been 89.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been my first con I went to. And when I was there, I bumped into Bill Wallen, who was the VP of Sony Pictures. And he was floating around, like talking to various creators and stuff like that about ideas. And so he was beside me when I was showing my portfolio to, I think it was Techno Comics. It was
yes, I do vaguely remember them.
the one with the fist, and yeah.
Were they the ones that did the Neil Gaiman stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, well, like Lady Justice and maybe not.
Right.
Was it Lady Justice? Technophage and all those books.
I think so.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy, or you.
Yes, yeah. Primortals or something.
Yeah,
Primordial.
that's
Yeah.
exactly. And he looked at my work and he said, "Oh, Men in Black." And I said, "Oh, you know it?" He said, "No, and I'm making the movie." And I'm like, wow, that's cool. So he gave him the card, and would have been 94, because there was a long time coming. Like it wasn't like a stint. It took forever to get this movie out.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it was early 90s. I recall 90.
Yeah, 94. I want to say.
Yeah, I want to agree with you. I want to say 93 because I always say that when I think of early 90s movies. I'm usually right, but I don't remember. So
yeah. And he promised the world the moon. Like when he met me, he said, "Oh yeah, you should come on board. You could do storyboards. You could do this and this and this and this." And then I didn't hear anything from him ever again. And that was fine until his secretary called me one day and said, "We have tickets for you to go to the premiere in Hollywood."
Oh, nice.
I said, "Well, can I get back to you tomorrow?" And she said, "No. These tickets are gold." So I said, "Okay, So what am I paying for?" "You're paying for everything." So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so luckily I had it on my credit card, so I just slapped everything on that and went to Hollywood. I'm glad I did, though.
It'd be a great experience, I'd imagine. It sucks that they couldn't, even as I'm sure with a budget as big as that movie, they couldn't have slapped you a plane ticket in a hotel.
No.
But 97 is when it came out, according to the internet. 1997.
So yeah, quite a bit later.
Yeah.
Quite a bit later. And I went to the San Diego Comic Con. Was it 3 times? Twice, just twice.
Mm-hmm.
But back when it was a Comic Con, they're fun. If you ever get a chance, I can't even recommend it now, man. I can't even say if you ever get a chance, go to, if you've never been to a Comic Con in San Diego. But I can't, because now I see new stuff with Comic Cons, and it's like, the
biggest one I've ever attended, really, and it's not even to say it's that big, was like Montreal. Like I went to one as a fan, and I really enjoyed it. I went as an exhibitor a few years ago, and it was a fun experience. I wouldn't say it was 100% worth it. Like I probably broke even with the trip up and the trip back, so I had to drive there. So you can't, fly.
Did you go with people, or did you just go yourself?
Well, I have friends that live there, so I stayed with them. However, I drove up, alone, and then drove back over a weekend. So it's a long drive. It's about 11, I got a heavy foot, so it's probably about 11 hours to drive there.
Yeah,
from here.
easily.
And yeah, I think it was the first day was good. I dropped off my stuff, and then the day of the first event, when I went to leave, I couldn't find my keys. I lost them somewhere in the convention.
No.
So my car was in the parking lot, and I couldn't move it because I didn't know keys. And so I had to leave it there overnight, take a bus to my friend's house. And then the next day, I had to like call a company to get them to fashion a key so I get into the car and drive it. However, just before, like an hour before they're supposed to come do it, I remembered I bought something. I don't know if you can see it on the wall over there. It's actually you can't. It's a film still from Gremlins. It's like a little light box that lights up, and I realized I probably took my money out of my pocket and put the keys on the counter. So I found them and got the keys eventually, but I still had to pay the company for getting the rights to make my key because I had to cancel them. So yeah, it was quite the experience. But yeah, it was a fun time. And the first time, like Montreal, it was overwhelming to me to walk and meet these amazing comic creators, and also like the comic guys weren't busy. You know, like it was all about Spike from Buffy. Like Stan Lee was there, and I got to get a picture with him, which was kind of cool, and stuff like that. He's the only one I would have paid money to get a picture with.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I met Jeremy Bullock, who played Boba Fett, and like the woman that played Greedo, and just like, but the comic lines like Ty Templeton, no one was in line to see him. Sergio Aragonés, Stan Sakai. I met Neil Adams briefly, and a lot of other really cool creators. Herb Trimpe. Guy that was drawing Venom at the time, what's his last name? Tom Fowler. Like a lot of really cool guys. And like I noticed you're saying how the comic, when it was a Comic-Con, because it seems like that's far less of a part of it and more of the sci-fi TV movie guys.
Pop culture, you know, I think that was the big thing.
Which is cool, but I just would like to see more of the comic stuff get celebrated.
What year was that? That could have been the same year that I went up with my daughter to Montreal. I've only been to one Montreal con. Let's
see. It's after I'm looking at the picture of me and Stan Lee on the wall with my friends. I was still bald, so it would have been probably 2014 maybe?
Yeah, no. This
13, 14, somewhere around there.
He wasn't there. I would have remembered that.
Stanley, yeah. It was funny. You're talking about the opportunities. I was walking along the floor. Two things. I had my independent comic that I made, Humbug, and I was giving it out to comic creators. One of the great, side note, I'll make Sergio Aragonés and Stan Sakai are the coolest people on the planet. And I'll tell you why. I gave them my comic, and Sergio goes, "Come back tomorrow." So I came back tomorrow. He had read it overnight and gave me a bunch of tips about it. He went out of the same with Stan. They went out of their way to read it and then come back the next day and give me notes. Like I was just a nobody that had them come.
It didn't blow you away. Like for me, that's because it happened to me as well when I was when I went to San Diego the first time. I wanted to pick up my son Ninja Turtle comics and get them signed by Eastman and Laird because they were there. But this is when they were really hot. So their table was packed with people. I went a couple of years later and they didn't have any table. But you know what I mean? That's how fast it was.
Well, they're still rolling it in.
I remember going up as Eastman was standing up, and I was going to get him to sign a book, and he said, "Sorry, man, I'm going to go for lunch. If you come back, I'll take care of it." And I remember then I was like, "That's fine, I understand." So I'm walking around, and I bump into him, and droves of people coming towards me, and there he is with his then wife, Julie. And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm heading back to my table now, man. You want to come and I'll have a look at that book and sign it for you." I'm like, holy crap, that's cool stuff. Yeah. And I learned from it. I said, if I get to that point, I want to be that guy. I don't want to be, the other creators that are so snooty and gross. And
well, not as a negative thing, but kind of, I guess, I don't know. So that same week, we got to go get a picture with Stan Lee, and it was like $90, and me and my friends chipped in on it, so it was like 30 each. So all three of us got the picture of Stan Lee, and as we walked up, we were like the first people in line. So they just get you in, get you out, get the picture, get out, right? You sign up, they mail you the picture or email it to you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Mr. Lee, I'm a huge fan. I just want to give you a copy of my comic I made." And he was like, "Thanks." And we took the picture with him. And as they're rushing us out the side to bring the next people in, I literally see him throw the comic across the room at a security guard. He's like, "Hold on to this." I highly doubt he looked at it.
Yeah.
But during the day, I ran into some guy on the floor who it was weird happenstance. He just goes, hey, he goes, you look like a Spider-Man fan. I was wearing a Spider-Man shirt. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I won these tickets to this gala event with Stan Lee tonight, which is at some hotel downtown. And the tickets were online. I remember when I looked on the website were like $200 or $300. And it was like, you get to food and drink and you go to this top floor of this hotel, swanky thing. You get to have a picture with Stan Lee and get him to sign 2 items. So I was like, all right, cool. So he's like, yeah, I won them and I can't go. So do you want these tickets? Like, well, how much do you want them for? He's like, I don't know, like $40. And I was like, oh, I'm here with friends. Like, I'm kind of an idiot at this point. I'm like, I don't know if they'd be okay with me like leaving them. So maybe I'll find you later and see if that'll work. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And I walked away. And then, towards the end of the day, he just sees me again. He goes, oh, hey, I still have those tickets if you want them. And I looked at my friend. He's like, you idiot, go. So I got them from him and I went. But it was a madhouse. Like, the best part of it was I got to hang out with like Gail Simone and like some other people that were there.
Nice.
Talk to them because the new 52 was just announced when DC was like revamping everything, and she was telling me about some of the stuff to do with it. Nothing like she couldn't tell me, but just sort of from the writer's end. Right. But when he showed up, like it was free food and booze, which I definitely drank and ate worth the $40. But when he showed up, there was a mountain of people like just running at him, and Scurdy's like, get back, you animals, like get back, let him eat, just let him eat. And then like Stan Lee was like 90, like
he was old then.
He was like 85 or something. Like he walks towards the table, he's sitting down eating, and in front of him is a wall of people just staring at him, wringing their hands, waiting for their chance. And I'm like, oh fuck this, like I don't want to do this. So I went over and I ate some more food and talked to some more people, and I managed to get in and get a quick photo with him and get up. I didn't even bother getting him to sign my comics because it was crazy. Like, it was ridiculous. And then they're like, Stan's just going out for a minute. He'll be back. And I'm like, no, he won't. He never came back. So, yeah, it was a madhouse.
Tired and old, Poor man. Can you imagine?
Were you the one telling me about the story about when he was doing the signing?
What's that?
Were you the one telling me the story when he was doing the signing and he, like, couldn't sign because he was just tired? And
Yes, I think it was, somebody had told me that. I think it was a Calgary show. And I think it might have been Kelly Tyndall was telling me where he had witnessed, and it may not have been Kelly, but where he had actually witnessed his handler, like literally just taking his hand and moving it and holding the pen for him and saying, come on, Stan, just a few more. And I remember, just how appalling that was to realize that this poor man. But, cost of fame, I guess, right?
I suppose. I
mean, you and I one day, we're going to be all crickety and old, and somebody's going to be holding our hand.
Yeah, I hope that one day reach.
André, just one more.
I hope to one day reach the level of success when I can be exploited. That's the level. But man, for
like to live a long life, and you think about other iconic creators, in the industry, I mean iconic, and right up there, with Stan Lee as far as I'm concerned. But individuals like who was I thinking about? Well, Neil Adams, obviously, and Neil Adams is in top form now. He's just
still going, still cranking out. He's got a new Fantastic Four book out now. No.
But there was another, because when I went to the shows in San Diego years ago, this was before all of this mutation happened in the pop culture. Even the early Fan Expo in Toronto, I remember going to those shows. And we're talking like early thousands, like early 2000 or what have you. Not that long ago. And I remember walking around and, just having space for one thing to be able to walk around. But to be able to just meet with creators and not have throngs of people hanging around or what have you. And I remember one day I was walking by a table and I looked down and it was Les Barker, the creator of Johnny Canuck. And he was just sitting there all alone at the table, like, like nobody was going to this table. So I went up because at that point I was doing some Captain Canuck stuff for Richard Comley. So, I mean, I was really keen on Canadian stuff. And I went up and he was the nicest man. But just to be able to sit, and I'm thinking, boy, if you were Stan Lee, wouldn't be able to do this.
No.
But the first show I went to in San Diego, I met Stan Lee, had a great conversation with him. I met Jack Kirby.
Oh, wow.
From him. even though he had the bandaged hand, because you know the legend of the bandaged hand,
I
right?
do not.
He stopped doing. He used to do sketches at shows all the time, and he stopped doing it because somebody had gotten a sketch for free, by the way, and he did a sketch for some asshole who just basically grabbed it, held it up right in front of him. It says Jack Kirby, $50, you know, whatever. And so Kirby was kind of disillusioned about doing that exercise anymore.
I don't blame him.
And so he would put bandages on his hand, and his wife Roz would say, "Oh, Jack hurt his hand, and you know he's not signing or what have you." But he did sign it. And I said, "That's fine. You don't have to sign anything. Sorry about your hand." And just wanted to tell you, yada yada, the fanboy, blah blah blah. And then he just give me the book. I'll sign it. And so I got this lovely Jack Kirby signature, and sweet man. Met Will Eisner on the airplane, which was
wow.
cool. Met Mobius. That's where I got the Mobius sketch. And they're sketching for everybody that stood in line, and there was like a line of people, and he was doing these quick little doodles for free.
The two things I'd brought to get Stan Lee to sign that I didn't get him to sign were the 2 issues of Silver Surfer he and Mobius did.
Oh yeah.
So I had the 2 issues, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Man, that's like a who's who of amazing comic talent in one place.
No, it was a marvelous experience for me, definitely. And I mean, I was at that point I was in my at that point I would have been in my 20s, so I was still young. But it was a great time. And then the second time I went, I was working at the college, and the way I did it was because I started working for Malibu. I was exporting my artwork down to the States. So I signed up as an exporter. And because I did that, the government had a thing called the Department of Industry. It's called something now. I think it's a COA or what have you. They would have grants, travel grants. And so I just applied for these travel grants because I was an exporter, and it would pay for my trip.
Wow.
So
that's a really smart idea.
Well, the first time I went to Toronto, I was talking to Dave Ross, another illustrator from Toronto, and he came up to me and he said, "So, did you get the Department of Industry to pay for this trip?" And this was then Hobby Star. This was before Van Expo, James Whaley's show. And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "How did you swing that?" And I said, "Well," I explained it to him, and he said, "Well, I should be doing that." I said, "You all should be doing it."
Yeah.
You know, you're exporting your work. You know, you're working with an international company. Is of course, why shouldn't you be? And so anyway.
Well, that's a great tip for any comic people out there
And I
now.
learned that with commercial design. I learned that with being a designer. I learned that from that profession. You know, that you can tap into that. So it's kind of cool.
Fantastic. So you had a child. You're working now. You now got a job at back at Holland College where you
College doing the job that yeah.
When did the marriage happen?
My first marriage was 1984, 83. It's so long ago and so far away. But,
you have 2 children from that marriage? Am I right in that?
Yes. She had a son, Robbie, and he was 5 when we married. And then Erin came along in 1990, so she's 30 this year. So
wow, what is
now
she?
I'm a grandparent as well. So
wow, congratulations. What did she get into?
She is a massage therapist.
Oh, right on.
She went to NASC. And realized that pottery is definitely not a career goal, and so then she registered massage therapy, which kind of makes sense, right? It's still using your hands and
totally
quite excellent at it. So yeah,
very cool.
Well, people that go to her really like the fact that she can sleuth her way through and actually find where the pain comes from and work it out.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for those people because they've helped me a lot over the years with the wrestling career. It's little aches and pains and stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. So when did so you taught all through that? Were you still kind of doing comics on the periphery while you're working in Holland?
I was doing it not as much, but then I landed. I was doing my own stuff, a lot of my own work, which wasn't going to go anywhere. And then what happened was, I'm trying to piece this together. I had posted one of my stories I created online, and a company in Minneapolis called Learner Publishing saw that. And so they hired me to do a number of books for them, like graphic novels for them. So they were awesome. They were like 6-month deadlines, so it was perfect for me. I spent a number of summers just working on these books. There would have been You the Great, Sunjata, and then they did a series called Twisted Journeys. They did a few books with Paul Story, and yeah, so they were fun. It was Choose to Lose Adventure.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
That's a neat idea. I was actually talking to someone about that, how I'm surprised no one's done that in the comic book world, is do a graphic novel version of Choose Your Own Adventure, and I guess someone has.
And they did, like Learner did. They were called Twisted Journeys. They couldn't use the Choose to Lose Adventure because of copyright. But it was really fun. It was really different because the book was written all out of sequence. Because of course, if you go to page this, or what have you. But it was a really neat challenge. I enjoyed doing it.
Cool.
And then when I guess the money dried out, then that stopped.
You had done when did because you did the Canadian Canadian thing, right? It was like an anthology of Canadian comics or Canadian superheroes or something. I saw it listed on your bio. I thought.
Oh,
maybe I imagined it.
I'm not sure.
Well, you did the Charleston thing, right? You contributed to that.
Yeah, the Charlton Comics. Yeah, and that was a few years back. That was prior to me retiring, and I jumped on that bandwagon. To work with writers, professional writers that I've always liked their writing style, like Roger McKenzie, Paul Cooperberg. These are people that are ex-Marvel people, DC people, and Paul Cooperberg in particular was a favorite because he could write a good story, and he had a way of being able to just make a story make sense. And, I remember when Dave Stewart, my current writer, he never wrote a comic book, and so he said, "Do you have any examples of scripts?" So I just handed him a bunch of Cooperberg scripts. I said, "Here, just the way he writes, and he just cottoned right onto it. And he sent me a script, and I said, "This is perfect." Big description, and then little dialogue, but the description just takes my imagination, makes me doodle, makes me draw. So,
Is that the style you prefer? Because I was thinking about that recently and discussing with someone about the style of the scripts that come in. So I looked at you look at some of the script books that come with comics, usually in the back of the adaptions or whatever, the collections, and you'll see the Frank Miller one would be like a page. It doesn't even really tell you what's there. It's just it's like a book. It's like a paragraphs of the whole what's going on.
Yeah, I like
others that
style.
Break it down to panel and that.
Yeah. Either or. I can work with either or. Like the Marvel style, which is obviously the plot and the synopsis, literally just a couple of pages, but it's a sort of gives you enough to be able to break it into a 20 or 22 page format. Or you can do the standard script way, which is panel 1, blah, 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 yada, yada, panel 2, blah, 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 blah. I can work with both, but what I really like working with is when the writer just really rambles on. I get lost in that, and it's just because they're fleshing out a reality right before me, and then I can be able to see that reality in my mind. I can work it out, and of course, with your thumbnailing, you always put little arrows, and you say, get a reference for this, get a reference for this, and what have you. And so, because reference, for me, research is one of the funnest parts of doing any job, because if you're doing something that you've never done before, then doing the research for it is quite exciting, because you learn things, right? So you don't stop.
Canadiana, the new Spirit of Canada. That's the thing I was trying to remember, was the Canadian thing you worked on.
Canadiana was when I had met Mark Shaneblum, this would have been at Hobby Star. But then after that, when I drove up to the Toronto shows, I would stop. He lived in Montreal, and I would, pick him up, and then we'd travel down to Toronto. And I ended up doing that with Yannick Paquette. I ended up doing that with Gabrielle Morissette came with me one time. But it would just be a traveling road show. And it is, by the way, André, if you can work it out, if you want to go to Toronto, next summer after this COVID thing is taken care of or what have you, get a hold of me, man. You meet me at the bridge and travel.
I'll happily go. That'd be so much fun. I've always wanted to, but I feel like it'd be such a better trip to go with somebody else. So
Absolutely.
I'm in. Let's do it. We'll make a plan right now.
I think the road trip is the way to do it. And
it'd be so much
Robert
fun.
and we went to London, Ontario last year. And while the show was good, but the trip was awesome.
Oh no, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And of course, we have a stop point in Montreal. I can make sure that we coordinate some stop point where we can just crash for the night and get up first thing and then keep driving.
Perfect. So, yeah. No, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So carried through, and now you're doing Sandstone.
Yes, Canadiana was a Mark Shane Bloom, Sandy Carruthers, and Jeff Allward production. So, and it was a web comic. It was always meant to be just web comic. That was at the point in time where I was considering buying Captain Canuck.
You could have bought Captain Canuck?
It was for sale.
Really?
The character was for sale. But Comley was asking too much money for it.
Wow.
And so I said, well, screw that. I'll just make up my own character. So I made up Canadiana. We tried to revive her after I retired. I worked with Mark on it, and it was difficult because both of us were having our own timeline foibles. It's really hard to do self-initiation on things. And Canadiana, she's going to get her day again. It's going to happen. I know that. But we have to wait, and
bide your time.
She'll come back, She'll come back. Probably under the Sandstone imprint, probably.
Oh, well, what better way? So now, Sandy, you're remarried. You have a new wife. Well, not new.
Yes.
How long have you guys married for now?
Well, right now, it was 2012. We got married.
Okay,
so that places it. Do the math. Yes. But we've been together for 20 years.
Oh, right on. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So
we were going to get married, but because both of us were married previously, and we were like, we were just happy. We were in love with each other and what have you. And but then we bought a house, and the lawyer said to us, well, you should get married. I said, why? I said, because
tax purposes.
For tax purposes, and also because if you and I didn't know this, but the lawyer informed us that if you're just a spouse, like a live-in spouse, they don't have the equal rights towards your property if their name is on it or not. So if you die, it could go on probate.
Really?
If you were married, hers right away.
Wow.
So I said to Holly, well, let's get married. I said, it's 2012. Let's do it for December 20th. And I was just joking around. I think I was a little drunk when I said it. And the little bugger coordinated it so that it was about a week beforehand. And she said, yeah, we're getting married on the 20th, and we're going to have a big party on the 21st, the end of the world. And I said, let's do it. And we had a great time.
And it didn't happen. The world did not end. You're like, well, I might as well if the world's going to end. But then the next day, you're like, wow.
If I'm going to die tomorrow, and you're the last man on earth, I can't think of anything worse to do.
That's hilarious. So Sandstone. Let's, I guess, wrap it up somewhat. So I know you have more of your day you probably want to get to. But so Sandstone is an independent comic company that you've kind of created, grassroots style.
I met up with Robert Doan and Greg Webster, and we decided to give her a whirl. That we found this space, and I always find that having an office space is good for motivation. It makes you want to do it, right? And we managed to get the first issue out on time. Gosh, it just seems like it's hard to believe that we've been here for 2 years.
I was going to say, I remember because your first issue was like a compilation book, which I think I have right here somewhere. That had the different stories from the different people.
That's right.
That were
3
contributing.
different comics in one. So
Yes.
that's what we wanted to do. And the reason why we decided to go with that, as opposed to just doing the smaller copies, was we thought this is a good way to introduce island art, island writing in one big fell swoop, and then we'll break off into the smaller copies after that. I'm trying not to use the word floppies because I guess floppy is a bad word. So.
Oh, really? Is that a bad word? When did that become a bad word?
Yeah. I didn't know it was either, but I guess it's taboo to use it. So I'm trying not to say it. You know,
We have to come up with something. I guess that's
issues.
acceptable. Issues.
I always call them pamphlets, but I don't think that's proper, right?
I've never heard that one before. That's a good one.
Well, pamphlets are small books, which are just exactly like that. But
Right.
copies, whatever,
So
comics.
your contribution has been Century Man, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
which is
Leapfrog.
in Leapfrog. Yes.
Leapfrog was a sci-fi story that went for 2 issues. And then Century Man is my creation that I created back when I was a kid. It was the centennial for PEI, 1976, or 73. It was the 100-year anniversary. But I like the name Century Man, so I just kept coming back to him all these years. And then finally I just went, I'm going to make it, going to do it, going to write this bastard out. So I did.
There you go. And you did. Fantastic. And,
so number two is done in the thumbnail and script stage. So it's just waiting on the sideline. Brad Seymour, who's a guy, I don't know, have you seen Glory Bound? Have you seen that?
I have the comic. I have yet to read it.
You do have it. Oh,
yes.
very good.
Yeah. I have Century Man and Glory Bound and the third comic. Who's the third one?
Indestructible.
Yes, I have that as well. Yep.
Robert Doan's book.
Yes. Yep.
And Robert. So we're just holding off for a period and then we'll do Dark Sanctuary. The intention behind Dark Sanctuary is that it'll hopefully break into other horror titles. And then the next one after that will be a Western, but that'll come down the road.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I'm excited to see more stuff. I've enjoyed what I've seen so far, and
thank you.
I imagine it's going to be only bigger and better. So the Kickstarter's coming out next week, you were saying, for this?
Kickstarter is coming out in 2 days.
2 days.
October 1st.
Fantastic.
So when it gets launched, I'll be sure to send you a plug. Actually,
Please do.
I have a plug on Sandstone.
Yes.
Already.
Yep. Oh, okay, cool. We'll definitely share that on the social media stuff and make sure people get it on. And I'll be one of the first to back it. I love these. I did Troy and I did Pegamoose and
me too.
Yeah, and I actually backed the one that gave me Brenda's book too because I missed that the first time around.
Oh, right on.
So I got that in the suggestions. I think I posted this on Facebook. I don't know if you saw it. But when you have the shipping thing, it'll say any special instructions. So I put please send a sexy photo of Troy, and they sent this along to fulfill.
It.
I was quite funny because when I got the package, I figured they'd send something funny because I just and then I opened it. I didn't see anything. I was like, maybe they didn't see it. And then I opened it and that fell out, and I laughed hysterically.
Oh, he's brilliant. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sandy. It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
for having me, man. And I hope I didn't bore you to tears. But
Not at all. This has been awesome. I'd like the night we hung out when I stayed at your place. I was like, man, I wish I could have recorded that. We talked for like 6 hours.
I think I talked more. But anyway,
oh, dude, I learned so much.
A little in the cups that night. But.
So was I. We watched a meteor almost crash into the earth. It was amazing.
That was a huge meteor.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Me neither.
And it was massive.
I couldn't. It lit up the sky. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was like in the horizon. It was like that. It was
like, I remember the two of us were kind of starstruck. We're like, what the hell was that?
I've never
it's
seen
amazing.
It before.
Thank you so much, man. And I will definitely be in touch soon, and we'll make some plans to head to Toronto.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks again.
Take care, André.
Bye-bye. You too. Yeah, wasn't that fun? That was pretty fun, eh? I learned a lot talking with Sandy. He's a friend, and we did, as I mentioned towards the end, we did spend some time. He didn't have a headset, so the audio had a few issues here and there. Also, it froze, but it seemed to come through for the most part, so apologies for any issues with the sound there. But I think it all came through pretty well. Sandy's a very cool guy. I wish him all the best in everything he does, and I will maintain my friendship with him, and hopefully we get to do that trip to Toronto, because, man, that would be fun. He's one of the funnest people I've ever hung out with. Just to sit and talk, he's great, and I love him. Why can't I? Why can't I love somebody? Love him. I love him. And I love you. And I love everybody. Love all around. As I did mention towards the end of that interview, I did back the Kickstarter from Troy Little and Brenda for Troy's book, Angora Napkin, The Golden MacGuffin, which also came with the Halls of the Turnip King from Brenda Little, his wife. So I got them both. And in the notes, I had mentioned I asked them to send a sexy picture of Troy, and they sent me a photo, which I referenced, but I guess you can't see since this is a digital or a audio medium. A picture of his face photoshopped on Carrie Fisher's body in the slave Leia costume from Return of the Jedi. So it is a treasured piece. It says, to André, Troy Little XOXO, with that delightful image that is framed on my desk because I think it's hilarious. And yes, so thank you very much for tuning in to the Graphic Histories Podcast. Next week we'll be back to our normal format. This time it'll be part 2 of the history of Kang the Conqueror. It is a very long one. I broke it up into 2 parts. So you'll get the rest of Kang the Conqueror next week. Kang the Conqueror part 2. That's how many times I can say Kang the Conqueror. Kang. All right. Thank you very much for listening to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André Myatt. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you next time.